Hello and welcome. And thank you for virtually attending the Barnet Cultural Education Partnership online festival. I'll start with a special thanks to Beat and the fantastic musicians who provided the opening live music titled Refuge. I'd also like to thank all those involved, including CEP partners and members, our fantastic facilitators, and Arts Depot for organising and staffing this week-long festival. I'm Susy Stone, the first chair of Barnet's Cultural Exchange Partnership and former head teacher of Akiva School in Barnet. It has been just over a year since the launch event of the Barnet Cultural Education Partnership. And I'd like to remind you of the aims and mission. As a partnership, we aim to develop communication and relationships between schools, arts and cultural educations, and artists in the borough, in order to ensure every young person in the borough receives a rich cultural education to provide them with the tools to navigate the world and the confidence to feel it's theirs to enjoy. We place emphasis on children and young people who face greater challenges than others, including children with special educational needs, those removed from mainstream education, children in faith schools, and home-educated children and young people. We also focus a lot of BCEP work on the 3 working groups, which are health and well-being, performing arts in education, and local heritage. As part of the BCEP, we run an ongoing access fund where schools and arts organisations can apply for micro-grant funds of up to £500 for cultural projects. This year, we've been able to support the Israeli Dance Institute, who have created a programme for schools about Jewish festivals. And we've been able to use the grant to offer the programme to mainstream schools for free. Additionally, we are supporting VoiceBox to run 10 drama workshops in local schools. If you would like to apply for a grant, please visit the Barnet Cultural Education Partnership webpage to find the short application form. The link will be in the chat, and information and links will also be sent to you in follow-up emails. The focus of the BCEP Online Festival will be exploring and promoting cultural education with a focus on digital engagement and the impact of COVID-19. The schedule has been carefully curated and designed to also provide time for online networking and fusing new connections, for engaging and participating. We hope that there is something for everyone in the festival, and the structure allows people to dip in and out of sessions that are relevant for them. As you might know, the online festival is taking place every day this week. Other sessions cover diversifying the curriculum, creating partnerships to benefit SEN students, on-site and online learning with the RAF Museum, masculinity and well-being, inclusive dance online, and COVID-related practice for performing arts teaching. You can find out more about the sessions via the website page, which will be sent to you and is now in the chat box. I would now like to take a moment to allow our youth panel to introduce our new name and logo. As you might remember, from the launch event, Barnet Cultural Exchange Education Partnership was a working name, and I'm sure you'll agree it's not the catchiest of names. Our youth panel worked with the creative design organisation Sisterhood during an online logo design workshop. I'm going to pass over to Francesca to share with you.
Hi there, my name is Armin and I am part of the Barnet Cultural Education Partnership Youth Panel. Earlier this year, we took part in a logo design workshop with Sisterhood, a creative design organisation to help design the new name and logo design for the partnership. At the workshops, we used Mural to make digital versions of the logo, as well as doing other activities. We are really excited to share the new name and logo for Barnet Cultural Education Partnership. Drum roll, please! As you can see, we have decided to name the partnership Barnet and Culture for Youth. The logo highlights the words in art, in Barnet, and you in youth. We were also able to include handwritten versions of art, personally written by us.
Sorry, you couldn't see that. Let me try that again.
Hi there, my name is Armin and I am part of the Barnet Cultural Education Partnership Youth Panel. Earlier this year, we took part in a logo design workshop with Sisterhood, a creative design organisation to help design the new name and logo design for the partnership. At the workshops, we used Mural to make digital versions of the logo, as well as doing other activities. We are really excited to share the new name and logo for Barnet Cultural Education Partnership. Drum roll, please! As you can see, we have decided to name the partnership Barnet and Culture for Youth. The logo highlights the words in art, in Barnet, and you in youth. We were also able to include handwritten versions of art, personally written by us. We worked really hard to think of a name and logo for such an ambitious partnership. We are really pleased to share it with you. Make sure you keep an eye out for the logo as we develop Barnet and Culture for Youth.
Fabulous. Barnet and Culture for Youth. That's fantastic. I would like to thank Sisterhood, the youth panel, and everyone who contributed their ideas and feedback. We will be sharing this with members to include on their websites. Now I will pass you over to Jacqui O'Hanlon for our keynote speech. Jacqui is the Director of Education at the Royal Shakespeare Company, as well as the chair for the Cultural Learning Alliance. Over to you, Jacqui, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Susie, and thank you to Barnet Cultural Education Partnership, Barnet for Youth, for inviting me. Really lovely to be here. So as we enter the second week of national lockdown, opportunities like this to come together for inspiration, connection and challenge are much needed. And what I'd like to do in these opening remarks to kick off what looks like a brilliantly exciting and innovative and energizing set of events over the week. I wanted to just share some reflections with you about our current context, drawing on conversations that I've had with teachers and with our own youth board at the RSC. I want to remind us about evidence and research, and I hope that will be self-explanatory when I come to that bit. And then finish with some final thoughts on what it might mean to build back better. How can we do that? What are the foundations that we need in place to do that building back? So I have to start by saying that these are really perilous times, aren't they? We can't sort of escape the fact that they are. And reflecting a bit on the past few months, the exam debacle in the summer only narrowly missed being another example of hardwired inequity. The Culture Recovery Fund is now making grants. We know that that is too late for some of our colleagues and some arts organisations. The freelance workforce remains very exposed, and head teachers and teachers are grappling with unprecedented planning challenges. And young people are hungry to explore our present and what it means for their future and the future of our world. We've all seen and experienced losses. At the start of this academic year, to name just one, the arts education world mourned the great loss of the much loved and revered Ken Robinson, Sir Ken Robinson. And one of the only facts, I think, is that no one has the answers about what the future holds for society, for education, or for arts and culture. Solid ground is really hard to find at the moment. But what I found myself saying a lot over the past few months is the thing that shouldn't change is mission. Now, I might be trying to manufacture my own piece of certainty in keeping coming back to that. But it feels true to me that our collective mission to democratize who makes and shapes and creates arts experiences, our mission to use the power and potency of creative arts subjects and experience to help realize and release potential in young people, helping them find their voices, use their voices. Our mission to create learning environments in which all children can thrive and grow. Our mission to ensure that every child in every school can participate in high quality arts and cultural learning experiences that respect their lived experience. Those things all mattered pre-pandemic, and they still feel even more important now. That return to the core principles of what are we all here to do, whether we're an arts organisation, an individual artist, a school, a college, a university. How we deliver that mission has changed and is changing, and the vehicles that we deliver it through, but the mission hasn't. And in these times of enormous challenge, some of the qualities that we need to cope with the challenge, things like finding our voice so we can express our hopes and fears, things like a belief in our own agency, the ability to see different perspectives and viewpoints, having self-confidence, believing in our creativity, having flexibility, being able to turn on a sixpence. We're all currently having to do that every single day, it feels. All of those qualities are ones that we know we, young people, adults, develop through arts-rich learning. So I wanted to, in terms of thinking about the context that we're currently in, I wanted to share the things that I've heard most often from head teachers and the things I hear most often from young people, and they're slightly different in terms of what's driving those two different kinds of people in their decision making. So when I've been talking with head teachers, they've talked consistently about two priorities. One, supporting the emotional and well-being needs of children and young people. And two, addressing the attainment gap that has widened during the pandemic between particularly disadvantaged young people and their more advantaged peers. And the key issue coming through in the attainment area is around literacy. So some of the comments we've heard most are things like poverty is an increasingly big issue. Some of the children are going to be in a very different family circumstance now, with increases in unemployment. A head teacher in Birmingham, a head teacher in Cumbria, reflected that the students coming back aren't always the confident students we said goodbye to when we last saw them pre-lockdown. And we need, the job of this term has been about getting those students back to who they were before lockdown. Another head teacher in Kent reflected that over the last weeks, really over the whole period of lockdown, second lockdown, first lockdown, there's been no national conversation about how children learn, no drive that gives support in terms of educational provision. Nobody's talking about how we keep what we value in the curriculum, when what we value is built on interactivity, built on connectivity between students and between their teachers. So hold those priorities in your head. In consulting with our Youth Advisory Board, there's some slightly different priorities coming through. So our Youth Advisory Board is made up of 31 9 to 21-year-olds who are from across England. So we have a national programme of partnerships with schools across the country, and those 31 young people are all from different regions of England where we've got schools that we're in partnership with. So they have had the same 3 priorities completely consistently all the way through from March to now. We've met on a monthly basis, and these keep being their 3 priorities. The first and overwhelming priority is a desire for their schools and arts organisations to respond with urgency and action to issues of equity and inclusion. They are unequivocal and unwavering about the need for arts organisations and schools to be actively anti-racist and to be in dialogue now about what does that mean, what will we look like if our curriculum, if our workshops, if our workforce, if our culture is actively anti-racist. They want schools and arts organisations to have effective policies for reporting and dealing with acts of racism or discrimination. There's a request for greater education about systemic racism, alongside calls for more support for those experiencing different levels of aggression and other forms of racism. Strong calls for decolonising the curriculum, and I know you have a session on that this week. And of course, Romano Flello at the Royal Court has been leading work on decolonising the curriculum for the past 3 years. And we've been working with Romana and Mezaid, and one piece of progress, I mean, she's made loads of progress, but later this month, I'm pleased to report that we're having a meeting with 5 leading exam boards on changes to set texts, all been set up by Romana. But the people talking to the exam boards are going to be young people from the Royal Court Young Agitators Group and the RSC Youth Advisory Board. So young people from all different age ranges, year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, year 12, talking to those 5 exam boards about why change in set texts is so critical for their present and their futures. So that's very much their top priority. Second, for the young people that we've been consulting with, are worries about the impact of the pandemic on their educational lives and their futures. And third, kind of equal with number 2, are concerns about their mental well-being and the well-being of their peers. So in hearing what head teachers are really concerned about, and in hearing what young people are really concerned about, as artists and as teachers, we have a really important role to play, and we have great agency in supporting all of those priorities. And that's where I wanted to turn to research and evidence, because I think sometimes we can forget what we know to be true about what our work can achieve and can change. In my role as chair of the Cultural Learning Alliance, one of the jobs we think we can probably do most usefully right now is to keep reminding everybody about the tangible research that tells us unequivocally the difference that arts learning and arts experiences make to young people's lives. I'm having difficulty saying the word unequivocal. Anyway, Never mind. You know what I mean. So I'm just going to remind you of some of this research, because when you hear it, you go, I love to keep reading it, because it really does remind me of the importance of the work that we're doing. So here is some of the research that the Cultural Learning Alliance has promoted a lot. Students from poorer backgrounds are more likely to get a job and keep it if they have studied art subjects. A well-researched piece of work from America. A student from a low-income background is twice as likely to go to university if they have studied art subjects. Vocabulary at the age of 5 for any child is still the best predictor of whether that child will escape poverty later in life. That's a UK piece of evidence from the Department for Work and Pensions. Teenagers and young adults from low-income backgrounds who have a history of in-depth arts involvement show better academic outcomes than those who have less arts involvement. They achieve better grades and are more likely to go to university. That's another American piece of research from the National Endowment for the Arts. Students from low-income families who engage in the arts at school are 20% more likely to vote as adults. We really need everybody to be using their vote at the moment. An interesting one for the science lobby. Nobel laureates in the sciences are 22 times more likely than any other scientist in general to have been involved in the performing arts. So, if you're going to be a kind of just a scientist, brilliant. But if you want to be a Nobel laureate winning scientist, study the arts. Because actually, the evidence tells us that those scientists who have had a really rounded exposure to performing arts as well as sciences and continued that through their lives are the ones who become Nobel laureates. Kind of interesting. So, we might go, well, if that research all exists, why does it still feel so hard? Why aren't we making the progress? Well, another thing that I find really interesting in terms of just the momentum, there is a momentum in this work. In April this year, the DCMS, so our own government department, published an evidence summary for policymaking about the role of the arts in improving health and well-being. And the DCMS commissioned this evidence review on the back of the World Health Organization having published a report in November 2019 about the role of the arts in improving health and well-being. And so the DCMS they commissioned another review, which was grading evidence in terms of whether it could confidently be used to guide and inform policymaking. Now, that might feel really dry, mightn't it? But that's a really interesting commission that the DCMS have done there, because it's specifically what of this evidence should we be using to inform and guide our future policymaking. So one of the I'll just do a little quote from that report, which says, our findings show promising evidence for the following outcomes, suggesting that the evidence can be trusted to guide policy. And the two areas that they felt could be really trusted to guide policy are the use of the arts in supporting a child's social development. Gosh, how much is that needed now, the social development of children, and the use of the arts to support well-being in children. So the DCMS is saying there is enough evidence that both of those things happen. The arts support the social development of children and support well-being in children to guide future policy making. So we might all say, well, tell us something we didn't know. But that document and all of those pieces of research that I've cited before, sometimes I think we can lose our confidence because we can forget how much robust evidence there is in the communication of our work to schools or to budget holders within schools about why we must retain access to arts participation for all children in all schools. particularly for those people who need to make arguments to budget holders. There's sort of an irrefutable evidence base about why we should be continuing to make that investment. And we might all agree again, mightn't we, that all schools should be arts rich. And it's easy to say, let's have all schools being arts rich, but we even have a checklist that tells us what arts rich schools look like. And that checklist is possible because of different pieces of national research that have happened, and all of them correlate with the same identifiers of what are the qualities of an arts rich school. So the qualities of an arts rich school are: all arts rich schools, from all of the research studies, they give a high status to the arts with their schools, and that's really visible as soon as you enter the school. You can see from the public displays in the public spaces that arts have a status in this school. It's part of the school's identity. The schools have prioritised dedicated art spaces. The schools have developed a range of partnerships that facilitate both curricular and extracurricular offers for students. Arts-rich schools maintain curriculum breadth at secondary school. In some secondary schools, art subjects at Key Stage 4 are compulsory. So there's really good documentation of models of schools where there is a reverse of the e-baccalaureate, where students all have to commit to taking an art subject at GCSE. Arts-rich schools prioritise specialist staff teaching in the school at primary and secondary. And arts-rich school timetable in a way that puts the arts at the centre of school life. So it makes it possible, it means that students aren't being faced with binary choices. Either I can prioritise the sciences or I prioritise arts. The timetabling enables subjects to keep their options open right up to and including Key Stage 4. So, we've got this really compelling evidence about, or research about, what does an arts-rich school look like. Other example of research that we've got, at the RSC, we collaborated with the University of Nottingham and Tate on a 3-year longitudinal study about what it meant for students who were in arts-rich schools. Did they even notice they were in arts-rich schools, and did it matter to them? And could they articulate, if students are in an arts-rich school, could they actually articulate why that mattered to them? So we did this 3-year longitudinal study. It's the largest study of its kind, certainly in the UK, and we think globally. And it involved an analysis of 6,000 responses from about 5,500 young people, all between the age of 14 to 18. And we called that study Time to Listen because we were incredibly compelled by the strength and consistency of the views and opinions of that 5,500 young people and those 6,000 pieces of research that we analysed. So they were all young people from different parts of the country. They didn't, it was all small group focused discussions and surveys, different range of different research methods. But what they said, generally, they said art subjects are really different to other subjects. In art subjects, students reflected that their learning was open-ended. There was no right and wrong answer, and they valued having to develop and support their own views and opinions. They said, the students said, that art subjects were where they felt they developed a greater sense of their own identity, developed their own agency, self-belief, confidence, communication skills, empathy, and appreciation of difference and diversity. So the students were reporting back that they were conscious that those were all qualities that they were acquiring through music and drama and dance and visual arts. They said art subjects act as a valve for releasing pressures that they experienced elsewhere in their lives, and that contributed to improving their health, well-being and happiness. As one Year 11 student said, I'm more able to make mistakes and learn from them rather than hate myself for it. So young people are, we're saying across this 3-year study, they're saying loud and clear that art subjects and experiences make an important contribution to their whole sense of self, their identity, their health, their well-being. Just one more quote, which I thought was really interesting. They said that I think what another year 10 student said, I think art subjects are about what you think rather than what you're told to think. The arts are more about you creating something new. So we have the research and evidence we need to be really confident that these subjects, these experiences really matter. And like I said at the beginning, they mattered pre-pandemic, they matter as we're going through it, and they'll matter when we come out the other side of it. But it's hard to feel confident when we're often buffeted by external factors that feel as though they reduce the currency of the arts. So I just wanted to make some final reflections on what would need to change in order for us to build back better as an arts and cultural sector, as a national body of schools that are rich in the arts. What would that need to look like? So I think there are 3 things. I'm sure there's a whole heap of 150, but there definitely isn't one silver bullet, but here's my starter of 3 things. So the first thing is a national plan for cultural learning. The Cultural Learning Alliance has called for a national plan. The Durham Commission into Creativity and Education has called for a national plan. Some things that that national plan could include are things like an outline of the opportunities that every young person should have access to, regardless of background and geography. A requirement for the ongoing professional learning and development of artists and professionals working in the educational sector, including the digital upskilling of practitioners and teachers. We know that art subjects are difficult disciplines to teach online. Investment in R&D is needed for the provision of high quality teaching and learning. And support is also needed for arts teachers in socially distanced practice, COVID safe practice. And another thing that a national plan could usefully include are principles and best practice guidelines for engaging freelance arts learning professionals. And they obviously must be developed in paid consultation with freelance artists and adopted by small and large organisations and schools. A plan could include information about the key skills and knowledge that need to exist in schools and in arts and cultural organisations to ensure that the needs of young people are met. A plan could also include anti-racism protocols and reporting systems and workforce diversity commitments to ensure that any teams delivering work in and with schools and communities are inclusive and able to affirm the identities of people in our schools and communities, or help to develop their understanding and appreciation of lived experiences that are different to their own. All of that work on a national plan is really also about professionalising our profession, letting young people know that participatory arts represent a career pathway. A second foundational element for building back better, of course, has to be around funding. The Cultural Learning Alliance has long called for an arts premium, specific ring-fenced funding for arts education, building on the sports premium, which gives schools per pupil funding for them to take part in sports experiences. Now, when the Tory government was elected in December 2019, it was a manifesto promise that there would be an arts premium for young people in all secondary schools. I hope that can be extended to primary schools to help pupils develop the habits and passions that build cultural capital and underpin well-being. We believe that at the moment the arts premium is still in play at the Department for Education. It's just not made it up to the list of priorities as yet. A third foundation I think that would really benefit us in building back better is a coherent way of articulating the value of art subjects and experiences. So the latest GCSE results tell us that there has been a 37% decline in arts GCSE entries over the past 10 years. But the London School of Economics, Arts Council England and the British Academy have been working on developing a new way of articulating the purpose and value of arts, humanities and social science subjects that I think could really help us and really help teachers and families and students. So they have coined a term called SHAPE. So SHAPE is a new acronym. I mean, what it stands for is a little bit, I don't love it immensely, but SHAPE stands for Social Sciences, Humanities and the Arts for People and the Economy. We're never going to remember that, but we will remember SHAPE. So SHAPE is the new collective name for those subjects that have really struggled to hold their own alongside STEM subjects. But just that simple narrative, that SHAPE subjects help us understand ourselves, others and the human world around us. Now that sentence provides us with a form of expression that we haven't had before, but I think we need to help explain to teachers, families and careers advisors why these subjects are important, so that we can say to a parent or we can say to a student, you take a SHAPE, what SHAPE subject are you taking? Those subjects provide us with forms of expressions we need to build better, deeper, more connected lives. Which of those SHAPE subjects is your child going to take? I think that could really help us in the long run. If those three things were in place, a national plan, an arts premium, a way of describing our subjects as a collective, then I think that the mission to democratise who makes and shapes and creates theatre and arts experiences, music experiences, dance. That mission to ensure that every child in every school can access high quality arts and cultural learning that respect and reflect their lived experience and heritage, I think those things can be achieved. So thank you all for listening. I know the brilliant thing on this platform is nobody has a choice. Well, of course, you could always have just left. But I don't know whether, I think we've only got a couple of minutes left, but if there's any questions or reflections that anybody wants to make.
Thank you. Just to say thank you so much, Jacqui. That was really inspiring. And we were already saying about how that's made us proud to be working in the arts at a really difficult time. So that's a really fantastic way to open the week. We've got just a couple of minutes for anyone who's got a question. You can either pop it into the chat or take yourself off of mute. I'll let everybody just have a second to think.
Can I jump in quickly? It's Louisa from Arts Depot. Hi. I just wanted to quickly ask, I hadn't heard about SHAPE before. That's really interesting. I just wondered, I only wrote down quickly, did you say Royal Academy, London School of Economics, and who else was working on it? How can I find out more? Oh, you're muted, Jacqui.
You'd have thought I'd have learned by now. It's Arts Council England. It's really interesting, isn't it? That it's so it's ACE, the British Academy, and London School of Economics. And so if you Google SHAPE with those three bodies, you'll see that they've got a website. They've built a really helpful narrative that's really accessible about those subjects. They launched it and then lockdown happened in March. And so it just hasn't been able to get traction yet. But I think as a long-term idea, feels to me as though it could be really helpful to us.
It's really interesting because it feels much more, obviously I've heard of STEAM before, but that felt like sort of pushing arts into something else, whereas that feels much more coherent and existing separately. So perhaps a bit more power behind it. But thank you. There's so much in that. And I think really so many things for us to get thinking about, particularly in terms of advocacy at the moment. So thank you, it's really interesting.
It would be really fantastic to share the bits of research that you talked about, Jack. I'll follow up with an email and then we can share with everybody attending today and with also other members of the Cultural Education Partnership. Did anyone have any final questions or any reflections? No? Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jacqui. That was a really fantastic start.